You're not sticking to your grocery budget because you're finding a recipe you like online, buying all of the ingredients, and then you never touch them again. There's 2 bags of spinach sitting in your fridge, they're brown. In your pantry, there's like 1 serving each of 7 different pasta shapes, but this is the video that's gonna help you with that, at least for this week, because all of these ingredients, which are gonna make 5 dishes, 2 servings each, were $32. That's a little over $3 per serving, and I live in Lower Manhattan, so if you live pretty much anywhere else, it's gonna be cheaper. And if finding recipes and putting together a grocery list isn't really how you wanna spend your time, no worries, because it is how I wanna spend my time. I love doing things like this, so I'll do it all for you. These 5 dishes are super easy, but they have little flavor boosting tips that are gonna make all of these ingredients work twice as hard. They're written to serve 2 people, but if you're cooking just for yourself like I am, I usually make dinner and then I eat the leftovers the next day for lunch. Also, if you need to cook for more people, 4, you can double these recipes, but probably still keep that budget around $60 to $70, which I think is pretty good. Before we jump into the first recipe, I'm gonna list all of the pantry ingredients that I'm using that aren't on the grocery list, and I'll also list them below. I feel like most of these ingredients are pretty common pantry staples, but if you're missing something, feel free to swap it out for what you have, skip it, switch it for something you like better. That's all fine. I feel like these recipes are great jumping off points. You can add more, take away, do what makes you happy and what you have. The only pantry staples you might have to add to this list are butter and flour, because we're using quite a bit of them in one of these recipes. I buy a lot of butter and flour at once, and I feel like that's how most people operate and use them for a couple months. So I didn't do that today because that would have sent our cost way higher than it would be for most people. But keep in mind, if that's something you need to get, maybe add $5 to $7 on to what you're expecting to spend. Let's get started with the first recipe. All of the ingredients and directions will be listed in the description box. So our first recipe this week is going to be a brown butter miso orzo with chicken sausage. It all comes together in one pan. You could really use any kind of sausage. It doesn't even have to be chicken. It could be chicken Italian sausage, normal Italian sausage. I chose the spicy garlic chicken sausage at Trader Joe's because it was the cheapest one they had. But this is already cooked. We're just going to give it a nice sear in a skillet. You want something with higher sides, not a flat skillet, because we are going to be cooking the orzo in here as well. But we're going to brown it, get some flavor from it, saute our aromatics in that flavor. So we're not just throwing the sausage on top or reheating it, we're searing it and making sure it's adding flavor to the rest of the dish. You also could do this in a pot. I'm going to do it in a pan today to make sure you can see what's happening, but a pot would be fine too. Just a little glug of olive oil, because we are going to be adding quite a lot of butter to this, so just a little bit. Add in all the sausages. While these are searing, we're going to chop our vegetables. There's not too much that you have to do on these dishes. They're pretty low lift when it comes to chopping. We're going to finely dice half of a shallot, and we're going to mince a few cloves of garlic, probably about 3. I know that most people watching this are going to use some form of pre-minced garlic, and I get it. It takes a lot of time. It's kind of annoying. And I'm pro you doing whatever makes you cook in the kitchen. Like, I'm not going to shame you for those things. However, I have an idea. Frozen garlic. Those little jars of garlic and vinegar, it's like they're almost pickled. They don't really taste like garlic, and it's kind of weird. And if you like that, that's fine. But I find these little frozen garlics, they also make ginger from Trader Joe's. They're like $2, are a really, really great, easy hack. Always have your trash bowl. At this point, cut the heat off and let the pan cool down a little bit. Now on low heat, we're going to melt our butter and we're going to brown it. And what's happening here is when the butter heats up, the milk solids and the fat are separating and the water's evaporating. When the milk solids hit the bottom of the pan, they're toasting and they get that nice, nutty, caramel, delicious flavor that I'm obsessed with. And what's great about this is we weren't going to use this much butter, but we were going to use butter in this anyway, and now we're just taking it up a notch and making what's a pretty cheap ingredient even better. So you want to keep the heat pretty low because you don't want to burn this. When you're browning butter, it's best to use a light colored pan, that way you can see the specks. I'm not doing that today, just thought I'd mention that. As you start to smell the brown butter get a little toasty, a little nutty, we're going to go ahead and add in the shallots and garlic, but it's going to keep browning and we don't want it to burn. So at this point we can go ahead and add in our aromatics on low. We don't want to burn the garlic either. And we're just going to soften these shallots and the garlic. It's going to take about 2 to 3 minutes. They're going to continue cooking when we make the orzo, but we just want to make sure there's like no bite left in them. At this point you're probably thinking, wow, this is a lot of butter. And yeah, I'll be honest, it is. But this is kind of like a jazzed up version of buttered doodles. There's no other sauce here, there's no heavy cream, there's not even cheese because we're really being low budget for this. And so this is our sauce. So it's really not that bad when you think of it that way. We're doing a cup of orzo. Honestly, this is gonna make a little more than 2 servings. That's about half a cup dried per person. The recommended amount is 1/4 of a cup, honestly. But I hate when I make a meal and there's not enough. You know, I'd rather have way too much. The orzo is starting to slightly brown, so I'm gonna go in with our 2 cups of chicken broth. Do a healthy pinch of salt. And then I'm also gonna do like 1/4 of a teaspoon of oregano. And then the same amount of black pepper. Freshly cracked is always better. You could also add in some garlic and onion powder, Cajun seasoning, whatever you want to add in. Now's the time. So orzo is a pasta. It's rice shaped, but it's not rice. And so you can typically just boil it. But I like cooking it like this because some pasta shapes are kind of difficult to do the whole one pan technique with. But orzo is nice and tiny, and so everything still gets submerged and cooks evenly, but you get to keep all of that starchy pasta water that you'd usually add into like a sauce to make it glossier and thinner. But this all just stays in the pot. And so when you're using something like a butter sauce where there's not really a lot of sauce, it adds a lot of that texture and body that you need. Now that it's simmering, I'm going to turn the heat down to low, medium, low. And we're going to keep stirring it for the 8 to 10 minutes that it's cooking, just to make sure nothing's sticking. And if there was any fond left over from the sausage or the shallot, we want to make sure we scrape all of that up. All of the liquid has been sucked up, and there's just like a nice little glaze, and I'm going to mix in the miso paste. I waited because miso paste, the flavor can be ruined if you overcook it or overheat it. And so I just thought, might as well just add it at the end. It's about a tablespoon, and we can see if we want more. And then I'm just gonna mix in our sausage. Okay, I am so hungry, so let's dig in. This is great because it's like everything you love about a simple buttered noodle, but just so much better. And then it's nutty from the brown butter. It has umami from the miso. It's great. Okay, here's tonight's dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow. We're back for another recipe, and today is probably the easiest of all of them. It's an iteration of beans and rice, which is by far the best meal to have to save money. It has protein without adding like a meat source protein, and it can be any flavor profile. It can do anything. Today I'm going more of a South Asian flavor profile. I'd say I'm using some like warming spices. You can really add any spices to this though. If you wanted to add some meat, you could add some bacon, another kind of sausage. Really, this is a good base recipe. So I turn the heat to medium low, and I give it a big old glug of olive oil, probably about 2 teaspoons. And I have half of a shallot and a couple of cloves of garlic, just like our orzo pasta today. We're just gonna saute these lightly. These aromatics aren't mandatory, and sure, it's an extra step to chop things, but shallots are like 80 cents. A head of garlic, also like 80 cents. This is free flavor that it's really hard to pass up on. I'm gonna start some rice too because that's what we're eating this with. I normally would make about a cup of dried rice for this kind of meal for 2 servings. That's more than what you need for 2 servings, but I just always like to have extra when it comes to like rice and pasta and things that are easy to reuse in something else. I'm gonna do 2 cups though, because I have another recipe this week that is going to be served on white rice, and we might as well just make it all at once. I'm going to give that a rinse until the water runs clear. Yeah, we probably could have done 1.5 cups and been good for 2 different days of rice, but it's already in the pot, so. This sieve around, because now we're going to rinse the beans. Half a cup of chicken broth. I'm going to start with half a cup of half and half and just go from there and see if we need more. These are going to be nice, creamy, saucy beans. Bring that up to a simmer. I feel like this is a good amount of liquid. We can reevaluate later. I'm going to do a big pinch of salt. I'm going to do about 1/4 of a teaspoon of all of the spices I'm about to list off. Little cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, turmeric. It'll give it a beautiful color along with flavor. I've been really into nutmeg lately for some reason, so I'm just gonna do a little dash of that, not too much. There's so many things you could add to this too, whatever you really have in your pantry that you think would taste good together. Again, we're keeping it simple today, but I just think there's something that's so comforting about this. The water's boiling on the rice, so I'm gonna put a lid on that, turn it to low for about 15 minutes. And now that this is simmering, all I have to do is watch it, stir it, make sure everything's good and that the heavy cream isn't curdling, and let the sauce thicken up until it's coating the beans. I'll time it, but I'm thinking this is going to be done about the same time as the rice, and then we're going to stir in a little bit of spinach, and then that's it. It's been about 12 minutes, and I'm happy with where this is at consistency-wise, so I'm going to go ahead and add in our spinach. I'm going to do like 2 big handfuls. You can also chop this up. I might tear it up a little bit. Fresh herbs would be great here. Cilantro would be amazing. Now, a product of our tight budget, so I don't have a lot to garnish this with. I'm gonna put a little more pepper on top. Add some cilantro on top, that'd be beautiful. Something pickled would be fun. Something like that. I might even do a little drizzle of olive oil. Drizzle to add something extra. This is the perfect 20-minute long day. I'm looking for something comforting. Favorite TV shows coming on, sit on the couch and eat a meal. It's yummy, it's flavorful, it has protein, it has fiber, we're getting a green in, we're getting some rice in, it's filling, it's inexpensive. This is also gonna keep really well. We made 2 servings today because that is the parameter that we've set for this challenge, but if you wanted to make a big batch of this and freeze it and always have something you can just reach for, like an easy, comforting, microwavable meal, this is what you're looking for. Home from work, I was in office today, and it's not every day that I'm in the kitchen from the beginning to the end of the day, but usually once a week I am, and that was today, and that's always so much fun. But I get home and I'm absolutely exhausted because I've been on my feet for like 8 hours, and I usually don't want to cook more, but I want to make something that's delicious, that's filling, that's gonna have leftovers, that is gonna make me happy. And there's only one meal that really fits the ticket. There's many meals, but my favorite one is rice and gravy. But that could take a few hours, a lot of hours, depending on what protein you use, even though it is simple, unless we're making a chicken rice and gravy. So I'm not gonna call this a chicken fricassee, which if you're from Louisiana, they also have that in France, but different version. If you're from Louisiana, you know that it has more of like a darker roux, it takes a little more time. That's not really what we're gonna do today. And then I could make a sticky chicken, but that's like with the sugar roux, and I don't really feel like doing all that today either. So we're gonna make a really simple bare bones chicken rice and gravy, and it's gonna be delicious. It's gonna taste like we cooked it for hours. We did it. So we're using half a large onion, 1 green bell pepper, about 3 cloves of garlic. You could also throw some celery in here. You could do some herbs. You could do a lot of things. Again, super basic today. I'm gonna chop these up, and then I'm gonna tell you how you're getting robbed at the grocery store, because you are. Veggies are chopped, we'll put them in the lid. Let's talk chicken thighs. So chicken thighs, inexpensive option, and sometimes in most applications, honestly, most of the time I like them better than using breast because they're just so forgiving. Here's the crazy part. These 3 chicken thighs, skin on, bone in, are $3. This one's $3.44. To buy 6 chicken thighs that were pretty small, but I'm guessing it's probably the same size if you take the skin and bone away. Like, I don't have proof of that, but I'm guessing probably about the same size. For 6 of those in 1 pack, it was $12. For these 6 chicken thighs, I paid like $6.50. I'm all for paying for convenience when it makes sense, when you can spend an extra $1 or 2 and save a lot of time. But taking the skin off and the bone out of these chicken thighs takes a minute max. It's very easy to do. That's a video for another day though, because we are going to be using the bone and the skin on today. Luckily, you don't even have to do the work, but it's crazy that that one little choice can save you 50% on chicken. That's crazy. And then we're going to sear them in this pot. I'm keeping the skin on and the bone in today because we're making rice and gravy, where it's all about braising meat for a long amount of time, soaking up a lot of flavor, and the bones and skin bring so much flavor to the table, it'd be silly not to use them if you have them. The heat's on medium-high. I want this pretty hot because we want to get a great sear. That's what's going to build our flavor in this rice and gravy, and then I'm doing a little drizzle of a neutral oil. You don't need too much oil because the chicken skin has so much fat that's going to render. I'm hitting these chicken thighs with some Cajun seasoning. You can also just do salt and pepper because we are going to season the this again later. For my pot, I'm using a Magnolite, which are pretty common in Louisiana. They're great for things like this, but any pot could work. Even this one I have back here, a Dutch oven. What's great about this is there's a lot of surface area, so I can sear all this chicken at once. If not, you can just do a couple batches for the chicken. We're gonna let these chicken thighs sear for quite a lot of time. When you're making a rice and gravy, this first step is the most crucial because it's when you're building all of your flavor. If you don't get it here, it's a little bit harder to bring it back later. It's been about like 6-7 minutes. So when you're searing meat like this, you're gonna know that it's ready to flip when it unsticks itself from the pan. If you're struggling to get it up, don't flip it. Just wait. Trust, just wait. All right, now I'm gonna let the other side brown. Okay, the chicken's seared on both sides, so I'm taking it out. Might get a little splattery, so be careful. Okay, now we're going in with our veggies. We want these to get pretty soft. We're gonna probably saute them for at least 10 minutes on low, medium low. The water content from these veggies are gonna start to pick up that grenise on the bottom, little crust that forms. That's where all of our flavor is. But we're also going to deglaze the pan, so don't worry if it doesn't get all of it. It's been about 8 to 10 minutes, and our veggies are soft. The bottom's still pretty dark. It picked up some of that grenise, but not all of it, but that's okay, because we're going to deglaze. We're going to add in about a tablespoon of flour, and that's going to create, ooh, got one everywhere. That's going to create a little bit of a roux. Some people like a pretty thin rice and gravy. I like it to have some body and be more of like a saucy. Just have a little bit of thickness. I'd say this is like a tablespoon and a half to 2 tablespoons, depending on how thick you want this. And we're just going to turn the heat to low and mix that with all of that fat from the chicken. To get out that raw flour taste, we're going to let this toast just for a minute or 2. I also forgot to mention, when you saute the veggies, add a pinch of salt to help break them down. We're going to start with 2 cups chicken broth. We're going to turn the heat up to medium. Using a wooden spoon or something sturdy, we're going to scrape up everything that's at the bottom of the pot. That's what's going to give everything flavor, and we also don't want it to burn. But I do want to say, don't worry if the bottom of your pot is looking quite dark in all of these steps. That's probably a good thing. As long as it's not black, you're probably just creating a really great flavor. Put the chicken thighs back in one layer. All of those drippings that gather at the bottom of your bowl, pour that into the straight flavor. You want the chicken thighs to be mostly covered, pretty much up to the top, at least halfway though. Probably should have done this part before I added in the chicken because now I'm gonna have to mix it all together. But I'm adding in some garlic powder, onion powder, good amount of black pepper, and a little more Cajun seasoning. I also like to add in a couple of dashes of Worcestershire sauce just to give it a little bit of depth, umami. We're gonna let this simmer covered until our chicken thighs are fully cooked and we're happy with where the flavor and body of the gravy is. I checked and this was ready after 20 minutes, but I was on the phone with my dad, so I let it go for like 30 minutes. That's the great thing about this. You can let it go for as long as you want because the heat's on low. These are chicken thighs. They're not going to dry out. Let it go as long as you want. It's only going to get better. I made some extra rice, that way I could just microwave this, and that's dinner. I know this recipe takes a little bit longer than the others, but I really do think it's worth it, and it's not difficult. All of these steps are pretty simple, but I love making dishes like this that pack so much flavor and just are really comforting. Let's eat. I'm dying to take a bite of this. We both know this only took about an hour. But if you didn't know that, it tastes like this has been simmering all day. It's because we're making the most of our ingredients. That's the name of the game, and luckily for me, that's what Cajun food is about a lot of the time, so I get to pull from a lot of great recipes I know from home, and this is one of them that should just be in your weekly meal rotation because it's so good. You'll want to leave at least 2 chicken thighs and some gravy left over because we're going to use the leftovers in another recipe that we're going to do later this week, and I'm super excited about that one. So pack up those leftovers, but that'll be later this week, and I'll see you tomorrow. Exciting news, it is cold in New York City right now, which if you love fall like me is very good news. And it's very fitting because tonight we're going to make some soup. This uses a lot of the same ingredients from the pasta on the first day, but we spread it out a little bit, and it's in a different format. It's not a pasta, it's a soup. So that's how I like to kind of break up meals and not eat the same thing twice. Once this is hot, we're going to start browning our sausage. And now that those are brown, I'm going to take them out with a slotted spoon, and we're going to throw our veggies in and saute those until they're softened, about 3 to 4 minutes. It's half of an onion and about 3 cloves of garlic. I'm going to turn the heat to medium-low. Now that the onions soften, I'm going to add in 3 cups of chicken broth. Bring it up to a boil. While it's coming up to a boil, you want to take your spatula, a wooden one would be great, and scrape the bottom of the pot to get up any fond from the sausage. Once the broth comes to a boil, we're going to add in 1 cup of orzo. We're going to go for 3 minutes because we're going to continue cooking once we add the half and half. As our 3 minutes is coming to an end, I'm going to add some cracked black pepper, some red pepper flakes, dried oregano. If you had basil, that would be great too. Also, I've been salting along the way. Salt when you add the onions and garlic. Salt before you add the orzo. Salt as you go, always. Our orzo is almost fully cooked, but we're going to keep cooking it because we're going to add the sausage back in, along with a cup of half and half. And then we're going to bring that back up to a simmer until it's to the thickness that we want. I'll come back when it's at that point to tell you how long that was. It took about 6 minutes to get to the consistency I wanted, and now that we're there, I'm going to add in a handful of spinach. So I took this pretty thick. You don't have to. I like a thick soup. I do. I really do. When I walked out the door and I felt what the weather felt like, I almost cried. I was so happy. I'm from somewhere that's very warm, but I do love a good like 70-degree day, 60 degrees. And so I'm very excited for more of that kind of weather because it's been a hot summer in New York. I feel like I'm back home. And I like the hot weather too, but it's just like, you know, it would be nice to not be sweating all day, every day, you know. I'm just gonna add a little crushed red pepper. It's also great if you have some cheese. You can do some cheese, you can do some fresh herbs, but again, budget people, stick into it. Start digging in, hot, oh my gosh. Comforting, it's cozy, but it's still a nice dense soup. There's lots of orzo. There's cream, there's spinach, there's sausage. Sometimes when you have soup, it's like, okay, that was good, but like now what am I gonna eat? Because I'm still hungry. This is very filling. All right, I'm gonna go cozy up and maybe watch a movie and eat this. I don't know, we'll see. And I'll see you tomorrow for our last meal. Hello, I'm not gonna lie, I've had a day that I'm so excited to eat what we're about to make that I still feel like cooking. I work next to sur la table, and that's kind of a problem because I can just go in there whenever I want. But today I bought a new apron. I think it's so cute, yay. So a couple of nights ago, we made chicken rice and gravy. Today we're gonna take that smothered chicken and make a little chicken pot pie. You can buy store-bought crust, that's definitely a lot more convenient, but I wanna show you how you can make just an easy little at-home pie crust with just butter, flour, salt. So I have 1/3 of a cup of butter, cold, that I've cut into little cubes, tinier cubes. And I'm just smushing that with my hands into 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I'm also gonna throw in a pinch of salt, which I actually should do now. I'm gonna throw in a pinch of salt. It's about like 1/2 teaspoon. So you're basically just pinching the butter into the flour between your thumbs. It's kind of fun. And there's so many different ways that you can make pie crust. There's so many hacks, like grating your butter or freezing your butter or just all kinds of things to get the best, flakiest pie crust. But that's not what we're going for today. We're just going for yummy, easy, nice pie crust. You don't want your pie crust to be homogeneous. You don't want your flour and butter to be completely combined at all. You want a pretty shaggy dough. I should have used a bigger bowl. I don't know what I was thinking. You want a pretty shaggy dough because that's what creates those flaky layers. Once your butter is well coated in flour and there's no big chunks, we're gonna put in some cold ice water, just like a tablespoon at a time. You can also just use cold water, but the ice kind of makes sure that it's cold enough not to melt the butter when it goes in. You definitely don't want to add too much water. I'm at about 2 tablespoons here. Coming together, but it's still a little too crumbly for me to think we're good, so I'm gonna do a little more. You wanna be pretty quick with this. We don't want this to take too long, because again, we don't want the butter to melt. You want those nice flaky, crumbly crust bits. And now we're gonna like basically smash it out and fold it in half. Smash it out, fold it in half. We're gonna do that about 4 or 5 times. What that's doing is doing a little faux lamination and making sure that that butter is in kind of like a layered formation. It's gonna make that nice crumbly crust. Boom, that easy. You'll wanna wrap this in plastic wrap or parchment paper or something. Onto the filling, we have our leftovers from yesterday. This chicken is still bone-in, which is not what you want for a pot pie. So we're gonna take it out. You can do this with a fork. It's kind of gross because it's all sticking together, but I'm just gonna shred this. If you have gloves, this might be a good time to use them. I'm just gonna throw that right in the pot. I'm gonna keep the skin in too. You don't have to, but I'm like, that's the yummiest part. A good idea if you know that you wanna use your leftovers this way is to shred this before you put it in to the container. And for reference, these are 2 chicken thighs that I'm shredding up. If you have more leftover, throw it in there. So I'm reheating this on medium, low. I'm gonna add just a little bit of chicken broth. You could also just do water, whatever you have, just to kind of help loosen this up and reheat evenly. I added in about 1/4 cup of broth. Once this comes to a simmer, we're gonna add in 1/2 cup of half and half. And that's gonna make it a nice creamy pot pie and also give us a little bit more liquid since we are working with leftovers. When you open up your leftovers, you might notice that the fat is separated from some of the gravy. But as you heat it up, that should reincorporate. Now that this is coming to a simmer, I'm gonna put it on low. So I'm gonna add in our 1/2 cup. And now all we have to do is bring that back up to a simmer, let it reduce a little bit, thicken up. Okay, it's been about 3-4 minutes. This is already getting nice and thick. Once it's a consistency you're happy with, I'm gonna throw in just a little bunch of spinach. And this is just gonna add like a little bit of green. You can skip this part if you don't want spinach in your pie. But also if you have peas, that would be great. If you have some other veggie scraps that cook quickly, anything. I'll show you what consistency we're working with. We added heavy cream, which takes a lot of salt. So I'm gonna do another little pinch. We need to preheat the oven, 375. Probably should have already done that. It's okay. I'm gonna put the lid on this because we do want it to cool down just a little bit before it goes into our pot pie. Then I also want the crust to rest a little bit longer. I think it's been about 15 minutes. I would love to go for 25-ish. And so I'm gonna let the oven preheat. I'll come back in about 10 minutes. I have this small casserole dish. You could do one of these little things, an oven safe bowl. If you fell into the trap of buying these little Target heart things, me too, use that. We're gonna roll out our dough. We're just gonna do a top crust today, no bottom crust. If you're using a smaller container like the ones that I showed you, you could probably do that. We're just gonna do a little top crust. You can see the little streaks of butter in this dough. That's exactly what we want. We want this to be about 1/4 of an inch thick and big enough to go over the top of your container. Just gonna pour our filling right into the dish. And then lay this on top. I'm gonna cut off any excess dough, but leave like 1/2 inch. I'm gonna roll it. Tiniest little crimp. Also use the fork method. I'm just shoving my pointer finger, the very tip of it, in between my thumb and my other pointer finger. Do one little X. Just let the air bubbles out. We could brush this with something. Simple, simple. It's going in the oven. I'm gonna start this at 20 minutes at 375. It's been about 40 minutes. Let's see. Here it is. It's cute. The edge does not look as cute as it could, but that's okay. Okay, let's give it a try. The crust I think is great. Even though we didn't do all of the methods and the things you can do to make like the perfect pie crust, I'm more than happy with this. It is just what I need tonight. The pot pie was so good. That episode of The Summer I Turned Pretty was painful. But this might win best recipe of the week. I don't know. You tell me. Well, that was number 5 of our easy budget recipes. I liked this menu. I think it was a good lineup. I want to do some more of these, so give me some ideas. What do you want to see? What budgets do you want to see? Maybe some themed menus. Let me know what else you want to see, and I'll see you next time.